Growing weary of running from room to room, practicing one-tooth insurance-driven dentistry? Then stay tuned for the latest episode of The Lionhearted, where Dr. Stephen Rasner will hand you the blueprint for what many call the gold standard of general practice dentistry.
Hi everyone, Dr. Steve Rasner here, and welcome back to the Lionhearted Dental Podcast. I haven't talked about it in a while, but you know why I call it the Lionhearted, right? It's not for those of you that are burned out. It's not for those of you that are great at real estate or something else beyond dentistry. It's for those of us that still love what we do and want to maximize our potential. I'm your host, Steve Rasner, and I've been doing it for 41 years. And I come on here weekly, trying to get into your head, trying to imagine that I have a chance to talk one-on-one to you and say something based on my career, based on something I've done that worked for me, that would inspire you. It's probably not going to be popular when I say this, but I really do think the majority of our profession is half in. I do. I think it's the few that dedicate enough time to CE and becoming better clinically and to leading your team, let alone finding the right team, which requires abundant energy. I get it all. I do. And so, tired of hearing me say this, but I never said it was easy. I've always said it, to me, it was just worth it. So that's who I am, if you're tuning in for the first time. I know you guys are all over the place. Some of you are listening right now on your way to work. Some of you are maybe in your gym or at a gym outside your house. I hope I can resonate just a couple ideas with you each week to make it a better path and journey for yourself. So here's what I want to talk about tonight. Here's what this is dedicated to. Hard to stay on track, but a little housekeeping. 2 months from now, I have my first surgical course of 2022. It's the extraction and bone grafting course. It is a very important course for those of you looking to expand your skills. You, if you're in the United States and have an active license, can come to New Jersey and practice these skills that we will teach on live patients. It's a pretty amazing setup I have, an agreement I have, and it's such an important part, in my opinion, of the thriving general practice. And look, I'm not just saying that. Think about what I preach each week. That the skill set, the quadrant skill set that I encourage you to explore, it's not going to be for all of you. Some of you may go down this path and not like it. But what I encourage you to do is get a oral sedation permit in your state or whatever country you're in. It is the most important thing I could ever give you. It's the thing that has allowed me to stay fresh, without a doubt. I hope you understand. And those of you that have never tuned in before understand that I have a sedation protocol Beth will gladly send you that is extraordinary compared to anything else I know out there. But it's something I do multiple times per day. Not like once every other day, twice, 3 times a week. Every single day, multiple times a day. And it's absolutely been a life changer for me and would be for you too. It's just easier to work on patients, whether you're doing operative dentistry or advanced implant skills, when they're sedated. And it's better for the patient. They get our best. How can you do your best when you're struggling with a patient to manage this patient who doesn't want to be uncooperative but just can't help themselves? That's what oral sedation does. And I know many of you listening have a IV sedation permit, and I salute you, and I did that many years ago. I think this is the magic. I mean magic, because there's not too many things that I came across in the last 4 decades that were almost too good to be true. And this is one of them. It's not that hard to get a permit. It's unbelievably a consistent product. Like, I've done implants for 25 years. That road is not flawless. There's a 4% failure rate in implants. And I know that my colleagues out there sometimes end up scratching their hand like I do mine, not understanding why a certain case failed. Sedation dentistry is probably the most predictable and worthwhile skill you could ever acquire. Now, I told you the 4 things that I think are essential to maximizing your potential would be a sedation permit. If you're going to have a sedation permit, you should learn how to take teeth out. And you don't even have to learn to take wisdom teeth out under my protocols. And that's subject for another conversation. But I don't think there's enough return on value. Like, you can't charge enough to take wisdom teeth out. I don't care how fast you are. The morbidity associated with third molars versus any other tooth in the mouth is significant. Whether it's a paresthesia, whether it is a bleeding episode, there's simply different anatomy in the third molar areas that can invite anxiety that's just not worth the fee you get in return. Listen, all my opinions are debatable, and that's one of them. For me, I certainly am capable of doing wisdom teeth. And I do ramus grafts. I do things that are right in that region. I just don't find that to be a worthwhile expenditure of my time. That's it. And then I always say to you, well, if you're going to have a sedation permit, if you're going to know how to take teeth out, then in 2022, you certainly must know how to graft and how to grow bone. Now, you don't have to do ramus grafts or sinus lifts and those kind of things, but you certainly should understand what to put in a different socket classification. If it has no lost walls, or 1 lost wall, or 2 lost walls of bone. What type of bone do you put in there? What type of membranes you put in there? And we go over all this at the live course that you would be coming to. But even if you don't come to me, learn it from somebody else. I don't care. I mean, I've been sold out, fortunately, for every course I've ever given live in the last 5 years. But you're my audience, so why would I not tell you guys about this, as I'm doing right now? And then the last of the quadrants would be, so it's sedation permit, extracting teeth atraumatically, grafting, and then I certainly would recommend that you incorporate some level of both surgical and prosthetic implant dentistry into your practice. That's it. Now, naturally, I haven't even mentioned prosthetics. Obviously, occlusion is an incredibly important part of long-term success, and there is much more to it. But that core I just gave you, and those of you that have been around me long enough know, I used to have what I called the dream residency. It's what I recommended you take if you hadn't taken courses, if you just got out of dental school, or you've just been dormant in the CE world for the last 5 years and 10 years, whatever it's been. All you've done is online courses to keep your license. I used to give out, and I still have it, what I'd recommend you do year 1 through year 5 for the next 5 years. So I do have a couple openings in our March course, and April is my implant live surgery course, where the same rules apply. You have an active license in the United States, and you can be an observer, by the way, from anywhere in the world, where you just come in and you walk into the operatories as we're doing this, and you have a bird's eye view of what's going on. Some of you aren't ready to dive in. Some of you want to see it up close, and that's why we have an observer-only position in addition to the operating doctors. So you can write to my Rasner Institute, speak to Beth, and that's enough of that. So here's what I'd like you to do with tonight's podcast. Some of you have gone into this year, and a lot of you are considering getting a management person to help your practice. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, unless you haven't taken the temperature of your own practice yet. Well, let me say that again. Before I would go out and hire a consultant, and I think there's many good ones in our industry, but before I would have any of you do that, I would ask you to take the next month, 4 weeks out of your life, and take the temperature of your practice in the following way. Why would you listen to somebody else when you know right now the things that resonate with you the most that you want changed? And I'm sure maybe there's some of you that are so lost that you don't know where to start. And I just think it's better to take a look, and this is how I would do it. Like, your homework in the next 4 weeks would be to get something set up on your computer that would cover the following things, like your brand, which means your marketing. That's number one. What is your brand? Do you have a brand? Look, in the first 10 years of my practice, you know what I used to brand? That you could get an appointment today. That's literally what I used to put in the local news. And by the way, where are you branding? It depends a little bit where you live. But if you're in a smaller or rural area, you can still use hard copy newspapers. You can. You can use the local giveaways that are in the markets that consumers just pick up when they're checking out. You could use the newspaper like I do of a small town. I don't think you can do that. In fact, I know you can't do that effectively in Chicago, Philadelphia, LA, Atlanta, big cities, because it's not cost effective. But you can in rural areas. And I wouldn't mind giving you my advice. I know what I would do if I was in a city. I just can't cover it all in a 30-minute podcast. So what is your brand, or what do you want it to be? And I've told you over and over again, I don't know how you can go wrong presently with a brand that focuses on one of three things. One is sedation. That is the most effective message you could put out there to your community. That you can be sedated orally. And I meant orally. I would not market IV sedation. It turns a lot of people off. It scares them. I mean, can you imagine having a vehicle to make patients sleepy while you work on them? That one guy, which is me, can tell you I've done it for 26 years. And I have never had one, not one. I can never get in front of you, this camera, or listen to my voice and lie about this. I have never had one untoward reaction for my sedation protocol. Not even somebody tripping in the hallway, because they can get up and go to the restroom. Or somebody falling out of my parking lot. Something, let alone something wrong with their oxygen concentration, because they're all monitored, or their vital signs. Never one. Now that can't be luck, my friends. So I'm giving you a vehicle that's incredibly safe and predictable. So that's one thing I'd brand. And the other message I would brand is much more challenging for you to earn. And that's trust and confidence. That the patients that hear you or see your print ads or go on your website, that's the message underneath. Now, do you even have that going on? So maybe this is the year, 2022, that we design that you design that. Listen, everything seems overwhelming in the beginning when you haven't done it. Oh my God, Rasner wants me to do this. He's talking, no wonder I'm not. No, there's an old saying, I used to have it in all my lectures. Leap and the net will appear. I don't know who said it. But what it means is when you go in a direction with earnest intention, you start to see the merits very quickly of the energy you're putting in. This isn't a rah-rah talk. This is real stuff. You can't forget right now who's talking to you. Do you understand? If any of you ever took the time to Google Cumberland County, New Jersey, go do it. Cumberland County, New Jersey. Google the economic climate from 1980 to now. And what you will see is that I was surrounded by a domino negative effect of a big factory called Owens, Illinois closing. It was like a half a mile of a factory. It was gigantic. It employed maybe 12 to 15% of our city. And it closed the year I opened. It was a glass factory. Owens, Illinois. At that time, it was the 6th largest glass factory in the world. And it closed. And little by little, at first we all had the hope, we heard, wow, it's a factory, we're not going to waste the space. And there was rumors Coca-Cola was going to come in there and Budweiser and whoever else, and it never happened. And slowly and painfully, the community, and I don't say this with disrespect, that's a community that gave me a phenomenal career, filled with good people, and it wasn't their fault that people were moving out. And overall, it's a very low income, severely challenged part of the United States, and has been. It has never made a comeback, ever. In the 40 years I've been in practice, it never came back. It just kept slowly declining. It's the truth. And I had a practice that enjoyed 29 consecutive years of increased growth and profitability. You think about that for a minute. If you had that right now, this year, I think you would go to 2051, something like that. What if you could follow the Lionheart Principles and go from now to 2051, I'll be long gone, and have success every year more than you did the year before? Is that an accident? I'm not bragging. It astounds me when I look. And it's these principles that I talk about each week for you. Even the homework exercise that I'm recommending you give. I'm going to go through these fast and then come back to them, I hope. But I would want to know, do you know what your brand is? That would be number one. Number two, your skill set. There's two ways for you to assess your skill set. One is, how much CE have you put in? What kind of skills are you providing? What's your scope of services? And how good are you at that? And anyone listening to me can absolutely change the level of excellence that you're presently delivering. I simply never stop. I don't think any elite athlete ever stops trying to get better. And I know I can be a lot better at every single thing I do. So what's the honest evaluation? What is the temperature of your skill set? And what is it you think you would like to take on and become great at? That's so brand, your skill set. These are the things that we need to take a temperature of. Your staff. And when you do your staff, you got to break it down to the clinic versus the business. For the next month, I would be taking notes as if you're creating a term paper that you're going to hand in to somebody. Hand it in to me. You guys must be hating me about now. I'm trying to think what I can say to you to get you to do this exercise before you pay somebody $60,000 who promised to make it better. Because I hear too many stories of that it gets better and then it's not better anymore. And I'll go back to what I said in the beginning of this podcast, because nobody knows the details of your organization better than you. You know the personalities, and so while we're at it, so your staff. And I would measure, and I would break it down to as many facets as you can think of, and add to them as the month goes on. How about the attitude? Seriously. What is the attitude of everybody that works for you? Have you really noticed? Because if it's just your presumption, it's really not science. And there's ways to all break this down and track it. I'm only asking you to do it for the next 4 weeks. I think that'll give you a snapshot. Are they prompt? And is it okay for them to come in later than everybody else? Maybe it's just 10 minutes later, but it's later. Do they call out a lot? Do they get jobs done when you ask for them? I want to give you a side protocol. You always hear me talk about the protocol book that I wrote. So I just talked to you about assessing your staff, clinical, business staff, and I just said to you, how are they at getting jobs done? This is a protocol. It's real brief from my book. It's called I'm Not Leaving Until I Get It Finished. Protocol number 86. This one is about attitude. The attitude of everyone on your payroll. It states that when you make a request, the staff understands, God, I love this book, that the expected deadline is today. I wrote that. I wrote that 20 years ago. And with every protocol in this book, there's a rationale. So here's the rationale for if you'll appease me. The rationale of I'm not leaving until it gets finished is that's just the way a good business is run. I'm not trying to instill a tyrannical quality in your leadership, doctor. I'm just trying to help you get stuff done. So when you ask the front desk team to check on the surgical patient from the day prior, when you ask a clinical staff member to send out the pulse oximeter for repair, or you just want to send a thank you referral gift, everyone must know you mean today, not the first thing tomorrow. Not, I tried, I left 2 messages. Nope. Find a way, get it done today. It's just one less thing to do tomorrow. And if you think about that one protocol, it's really the attitude that I led as a leader of my office. And it's a winning attitude. It may sound, gosh, this guy is not flexible. I'm not flexible with certain things. It's true. Because if you want to be the practice that I think we were and are in your community, which could be like my community, then you have to be palpably different. And to be palpably different, you got to bring energy and leadership, strong leadership, and expectations of that staff. And I did. I just wanted you to hear that. So let me finish. Brand, these are the things you're going to take the temperature of over the next month. What's your marketing? Who do people think of, or do they even think of you when they think of you as a dentist in your community? Maybe you're the dollar store of your community. Maybe you're known for being incredibly inexpensive. And by the way, you're probably very successful if that's your brand. It's not the brand of this podcast because it's impossible to deliver a high quality product, which involves staff, laboratories, supplies, and be the cheapest guy in town. It's not congruent. How are your skills? How about your team, breaking it up in the business and the clinical section? What about your patients? How loyal do you think you're creating in your patient community? Do they show up? Do you have constant breaks? Are there a lot of snapshots in this next month of unhappy patients for one reason or the next? Maybe it's failed clinical services. Often it's a misunderstood bill that they did not know or understand they have. How's your hygiene schedule? Is it moth-eaten? Is it consistent? You've always heard me say that hygiene is the most predictable, productive center in your practice. That means not the most lucrative, but it's an automatic guaranteed profit if you fill the schedule. That's why I always thought it was so important. You can't give it up. There's nothing else you do that you provide as an office, like hygiene, that brings you automatic profitability. If you have 8 bodies in a hygiene schedule, that's a source of profitability as part of your organization. I cut 4 crowns off last week. Zirconia. It only took me 7 hours. That had been in the patient's mouth 6 weeks. And I'm telling you, they were nice. I paid a serious fee from a serious dental lab. But in that patient's eyes, she didn't really like them. She didn't hate them. She came to me because she thought we were different. And I disappointed her. And I cut those suckers off within 6 weeks, and I did them over. And I switched materials, and I didn't make anything off that case. Because that's what happens. That's what happens sometimes when you're a dentist. Could I have taken a stand? I had her sign a form that she liked them before I put them in, as I do with any aesthetic case. You're damn right. I cut them off. And I did them over. And it wasn't easy. And I'm glad I did it. And I've always run my practice that way. So that doesn't happen in hygiene. Nobody ever finishes a hygiene visit and says, they don't feel so clean. Do it again, please. It rarely is that a real situation. So how are the patients in your practice? Are you cultivating and nourishing a healthy base of people that are saying a lot of favorable things to other potential patients? And then, of course, your business. So I guess that's 1, 2, 3. Brand, your skills, your staff, your patients is 4, and business is 5. And of course, underneath all these are multiple subcategories for you to break down to assess how each of the 5 rate to you. And under business, I would have, how's your number of new patients? Which obviously is connected to number 1, your brand, and how well you're putting your brand out there. How's your cash flow? Seriously. Is it like no factor? Like no problem? Payroll every couple weeks? No issues with that? Paying your vendors on time? Taking money for yourself? How's your billing? How's your 60, 90, 120 day insurance? Do you even know how that is or your billing is? How many people owe you? And then there's the other facilities that make up who you are and how happy you are when you're done. Your laboratories. Are you always sending things back? I sent something back today. I was disappointed. Beautiful case, except it was canted. And I took a FaceBo, photographs. It was unusual. That doesn't happen often. But if it did, it'd be a problem. I know it sounds a bit overwhelming, but you have to start by taking your temperature. Like, if you don't stop with anything and just put in the time to see really, because I know how easy you can go from Monday to Friday, completely check out over the weekend, right? And start up Monday through Friday. And you can make decent money doing that. Here's the problem. Are you really fulfilled under those categories I just said to you? Because the 6th thing is your happiness. Are you happy? Are you fulfilled? Are you challenged clinically? Today, I saw 4 patients. I had a 3-hour guided implant surgery. I don't really need 3 hours, but I like to give myself, as you've heard, more time because it makes it more enjoyable to me. Why would I rush? Why would you rush? Because my fees don't demand that I rush. And by the way, I know especially on this podcast, I've hit on a lot of different tangents. Write to me. Nobody's written to me in a month. So either I stink all of a sudden, and you guys aren't interested, or my subject matter is just, ugh. I hope it's not that. I realize that what I just said to you, you may have some follow-up questions. Well, hit me with them. That's why I do this. So anyway, that's really all I want to talk about this week. Been making these long lately. I'm sorry about that. I hope this helps you. I hope some of you write to me and follow through, because this is an important exercise before you commit to somebody that runs a business that's predicated on you saying yes to them. And that's fine, but they're not inexpensive and they're not all 100% effective. And that's just the way it is. See you next week on the Lionhearted podcast.